Welcome to another edition of Letters of Paul. Today I want to talk about a specific person in the Bible and a specific passage in the Bible. This week I was doing a devotional and I was reading a passage about Joseph. We all know that Joseph had such a hard life, which ended in a great life. He was also a little bit of a twit, to be honest. Because if you think about it, he is like the youngest of 12, and he's the father's favorite, and he just can't leave it alone. He has to egg on his brothers, poke his brothers, make his brothers angry. His dad gives him a special coat that's probably very expensive, and he has to wear it all over the place, make sure his brothers see it, so brothers get angry, right? And there's 11 of them, so we got a problem here. And they're going to kill him, but end up selling him into slavery. Of course, Joseph, being chosen by God, being special to God, following God's decrees, rises to a position of power. And he does this several times. The passage I want to focus on happens right after his rise to power, where he was over the entire house of Potiphar. And unfortunately for Joseph, he's also a very good-looking young man. And Potiphar's wife decides she'd like a little extracurricular activity with him. And of course, Joseph, being a godly man, says, "Look, your husband depends on me for everything. I will not break his trust. I'm not going to do this." She grabs his coat, grabs him by the coat, and she's going to drag him into the bedroom, and he breaks and runs. And of course, she screams rape and holds up his cloak as proof that she had to fight him off. And Potiphar is so furiously angry that this man he's trusted has betrayed him in such a way, he thinks. So he has him thrown in prison. And by the way, we're going to focus on Genesis chapter 40 and a little bit of chapter 41. In chapter 39, he has been put in prison. But he is so impressed, the warden, the guard over, the captain of the guard who's over the prison, that he puts him in charge at the prison, a prisoner in charge of the prison. And he is housed in the house of the captain of the guard. He's kind of like a trustee camp, I guess, in today's world, where the really good, trustworthy offenders get to be a little bit more free. In the prison I work at, we have porters who have earned the right to come pass into the front area, and they clean it, and they can go outside and do the trash and stuff like that. And they work hard, but they still have privileges. It'd be kind of like that. And at one point, he's in charge, and that's where we kind of come to chapter 40. Genesis 40, beginning in verse 1, it says, "Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with these two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them." So at this point, we have two used to be important officials who have been thrown into prison. Of course, with the king of Egypt, he didn't have to have a reason. You didn't have to break a law. He decided he was mad at you, you're thrown in prison. After they had been in custody for some time, so it wasn't a short stay, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in the prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked the Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Okay, and of course, that is the end of verse 8. We're going to jump to verse 12 in a second. But Joseph hears the dreams. He interprets the dreams for them. And in verse 12 of chapter 40, it says, "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer. When all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I've done nothing to deserve being put in prison. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. So Joseph interprets his dream and says, hey, you're going to be back in your former post. Please remember me. He also interpreted the dream of the baker. Unfortunately for the baker, his dream interpretation was within 3 days he would be killed, which is what happened. And of course, the cupbearer does get back into the graces of the king. Now we jump on to chapter 41, and I'm going to read just the first part of verse 1. When 2 years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. So Joseph has been left. It's been 2 years since the cupbearer was pulled out of the prison. He's left Joseph back there, and he's completely forgotten. 2 whole years. Then on to verse 9. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, today I'm reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servant, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And the things turned out to be exactly as he had interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. So you see what's happened. But he's had to wait 2 whole years. Now, if you tell someone, hey, remember me when you become important, and they go off and they become important, and time passes a whole 2 years, you're probably going to say, yeah, that guy's forgotten all about me. But he didn't. And Joseph was brought. He did remember when his memory was triggered. And I love the way the passage, he says, I'm reminded of my own shortcomings. When you were angry with me and had me thrown in prison. Not something I'm sure I want to remind the Pharaoh of. But that's what he did. And of course, Pharaoh, in this passage, everybody has failed to interpret his dream. So I'm not sure whether it was a favor or a curse, what he was visiting on Joseph by telling the Pharaoh about it, because everybody else has gotten it wrong and been punished, been killed. It's been a big deal. And now he's dragging Joseph into the mix. Hey, I know this young Hebrew. He managed to do it for me. And of course, he's been in prison a while. It's been more than 2 years, because he was locked up in prison and rose to a position of power. And then the baker and the cupbearer are brought in, and they're there for a while. And then it's been 2 years since then, so I'm guessing it had to have been 5 to 10 years that he's been in prison. That is a long time, especially, keep in mind, in prisons and dungeons, and at that time, there were no personal rights. They just threw you in a hole, maybe fed you when they wanted to, kind of thing. They beat you if they decided to. So it's a hard life. He's been in prison a long time, so he's not able to shave and probably bathe or do anything else. So before they bring him to Pharaoh, they got to get him cleaned up. He shaves for the first time. He gets a bath. He gets clean clothes. It's got to be exhilarating just to be clean after that. And then he comes to Pharaoh. Now the rest of the story is, of course, that he interprets Pharaoh's dream. And he tells him, well, what it means is there's going to be 7 years where we have so much plenty of food, crops, cattle, everything is going to be plentiful. It's going to be massively, we're going to have so much more than we need, such abundance. But following that 70 years, there's going to be such a drought that all this plenty that we have will be consumed. And Pharaoh says, Really? Okay, well, I'm putting you in charge. And Joseph is tasked with making sure that things are rationed during that first 7 years so that when the second 7 years comes, there will be plenty. And lo and behold, it happens just as Joseph said it would. 7 years of such abundance, but Joseph rations it, keeps back, stores things up, makes sure that they have plenty stored up for the 7 bad years. And then that 7 years of drought hits. And everybody around him, all the other countries, are starving. All the wandering tribes are starving. There's no food. There's no water. The livestock is dying. There's just such starvation and drought and lack. Except for in Egypt. Because Joseph interpreted the dream and he was in charge and he managed it so well. He became the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. He was second only to the Pharaoh. Think about that. He rose from prisoner, from slave to head of a household, to prisoner, to second only to Pharaoh. Only God could do things like that, right? But he did that. He rose to such a powerful place. Why? Well, obviously because God had something in mind for him. But he rose to such a powerful place because he did something for someone who at the time could not return the favor. He did something for someone who was utterly powerless, who was a prisoner just like himself. It was even worse because the Pharaoh was mad at him. And he didn't do it just for the cupbearer. He also did it for the baker. He did them the gift of the favor of interpreting their dreams. Because it was a gift that God had given him. Because he did a favor for someone who could not, at the present or in the foreseeable future, ever return that favor. Think about that. Because he did that for the cupbearer. He became the second most powerful man in Egypt. Because of that, he saved Egypt. Because of that, he was able to save his family. He was able to give his family a place in Egypt because he was so powerful. And they survived and thrived and became plentiful. Because he did a favor for someone who could not return the favor. And that's what struck me about this passage. How God knew that that one little thing would be what was needed to open that door. How often in our culture are we taught, or do we think about doing favors for people that can do a favor back? I mean, that's the keystone of the business culture, is connections, contacts. I mean, we have a whole website, LinkedIn, that's devoted to making contacts and doing favors for people, so that you can call that marker later, or you can befriend that person because they're powerful and they can help you later on. That's the way our culture unfortunately works. But Joseph did just the opposite. He did a favor for someone who at that time didn't look like he would ever be able to do him a favor. And it looked like he never would because he forgot about it for 2 years. We need to learn that lesson. We need to learn the lesson of not making it about what someone can do for us. We need to make it about using our gift. Using our gift that God has given us for the good of all or for someone who just needs it. That's a dangerous thought. We worry about, yeah, but what if this person abuses that? What if they're always wanting favors after that? That happens. I mean, sometimes in my area as a human resources manager, the people I go the extra mile for are the ones that burn me. I work extra hard and do extra things for them to get them where they need to be, to get them started and hired and in a position. And then they burn me. They quit. Or they lied to me and I found out later about something and we have to fire them. Usually when I make a hiring, I know that 6 months from now, probably half of those people won't be there anymore. And so that it gets in your mind that, why do I want to do this favor for somebody? Because, they come back to bite me. Or you do a favor for someone and they cling to you and they keep asking for more favors, right? That's what's in your head, that if I do this favor for them, well, they're going to be back tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Does that happen? Yeah, sometimes. It does. Does it happen often? In my experience, no. It happens just enough to make us worry about it, I think. But it does happen, yes. So what do you do in those situations? Well, you lay a boundary at some point. But you still start and give them the chance, because you don't know the future. You don't know what's out there. You never know how that may come back to you. Sometimes you may get burned. It happens. But sometimes in this life, in this world, those little favors to people who have no ability whatsoever to pay you back are the ones that are going to come back and pay you the biggest dividends. How do we know? We have to follow God's leading. Let's be honest with that. Scripture tells us that we should not lean into our own understanding. That God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. God stands outside of time. He can see the beginning and the end and all the things in the middle. He sees the things that might happen, the things that will happen. He sees every little thing, every detail. And so he knows that little bitty favor that you do over here, he knows when it will have those huge dividends. Now, what if you don't see it in your lifetime? And I can tell you that there are times in my life, things that my grandfather and my dad did, things that they did for someone, their reputation, the way that people remembered them, gave me an open door. Now, they may have reaped some benefit, but I, as the son or grandson, reaped benefits because of what they did. I've had people tell me, they mentioned that they knew my grandparents. And they say, oh, now I'm from East Texas, so the comment is usually, man, those are good people. They were good people. Both sets of grandparents. People remember them for the things they did, and they visit that on me. And they treat me with a respect and a caring that I wouldn't get. I haven't earned that. When I got my first car, I had to get insurance. My dad took me to the insurance guy named Scooter Phillips. He took me in. Scooter wanted to talk to me. And Scooter sat me down and he told me, he said, I'm giving you a preferential rate on your car insurance because your dad is a extremely safe driver with a really incredible driving record. Because your dad is the safe driver, I'm giving you a rate that's really good. So you're riding on your dad's coattails. You're riding on your dad's reputation. And he said, when you start thinking about driving crazy, running fast, doing stupid stuff, remember, it's your dad's reputation you're trading on. And when you screw up, it's going to damage your reputation, but it's also going to damage your dad's reputation. And I've always remembered that. I was the safest driver. Well, for the most part. But I did. I was a rule follower. I drove the speed limit. I did, because it was in my head. They planted it in my head that I was getting something because of something someone else had done. Done even before I was alive. So we may not always get the payoff. It may be something our kids or our grandkids get. It may be something that someone else reaps the benefit of. But it's something that can change the world. I always remembered that. We don't know. We really don't know. But that good deed, that favor, that helping him is what it's going to do. We don't know. But God does. So we have to learn to listen to Him. Listen to the nudgings that He gives us. It takes practice. I admit that. I'm still learning to hear God's voice in my life. But usually when you have an urge, a nudge, something that makes you want to go this way or do this, do something for this person, it's God. And we need to do it not because we're going to reap something from it, though. We need to do it because it's the right thing to do, because it's what God needs us to do. I remember when I was working in Marshall and I was driving an hour to work, an hour back every day. And I would leave early in the morning. One morning it was cold and it was drizzly rain, and as I was driving down the road through Henderson, hadn't gone very far from home, and I saw this lady in a coat, bundled up, walking down the side of the road. And I'm thinking, she's cold, she's wet, I ought to stop. But the logical part of my brain is like, no, don't stop, you're going to be late for work, keep driving, you're going to have to go. And I felt this urge just pushing me to turn around and go back, and I'm like, no, she'd probably be scared of me. If some strange guy pulled up beside her and wanted to ride, she'd be afraid they were going to kill her or something. I don't need to stop. She won't ride with me anyway. And that urge just couldn't quit. Stop and pick her up. And I got a quarter of a mile, maybe half a mile, and turned the car around. And I went back and I rolled down the window and I said, hey ma'am, you look a little cold and wet. Can I give you a ride somewhere? And she shivered and said, yeah, that would be really nice. She got in my car. I was surprised as anybody, she actually got in. And I said, where are you going? She told me it wasn't out of my way, really. So I took her and I dropped her off. And when I dropped her off, she said, thank you. And I went on to work. That's the last I've ever heard of that lady. I don't know if I made a difference in her life. Probably. I'm thinking because she would have had to walk, because it was about 5 miles that she would have had to walk in the rain and the cold. But I don't know whether that good deed paid off anything beyond that or not. And I remember thinking at a time in a very selfish way, getting this idea of what if there was an article in the paper, maybe she was somebody important, and there was an article in the paper about how this young man has done a good deed for this woman. And I'm pat on the back, thinking, when I felt that thought, I thought, oh my gosh, how selfish am I? You have to sometimes, you do it knowing that it's the right thing to do. not because there's going to be a payoff. But the thing is, when we do God's will, when we do what He wants us to do, He always rewards us in some way. Now, it may just be that good feeling that you get in your heart. But I believe that there's usually more. He will give us something, a reward, somehow. Sometimes maybe it's just that our kids see us do that, and it makes an impression on them, and it changes the way they approach life, because our kids are always watching. I remember I always noticed that when we finished a gallon of milk, my mom would put hot water in the empty gallon and screw the cap on and shake it and pour it out and do it 2 or 3 times until all that excess little residue of milk was gone. And it occurred to me that the reason she did that was because if you leave the milk residue, then it gets warm and it mildews and molds and curdles, and the whole milk jug just expands. And then if it pops, you take the lid off, it smells so horrible. So she was giving it a clean bottle so that that wouldn't happen. It made sense to me. And one time when I was in my early teens, I finished off a gallon of milk and I drank the last of the milk, and I rinsed the milk jug out because that's what I'd seen her do, because it made sense to me. And she was standing there and she said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Because I saw you do it and it made sense to me." She was shocked that I saw her do that. I was paying that kind of attention. But I'm telling you that our kids always watch us. And it's not just our kids. The world watches us. When we do a favor for someone who can't pay us back, and we do it because it's the right thing to do, the world sees that. And it helps them believe in our faith. Because there are plenty of people that claim to be Christians, but then they do horrible things. They do maybe not horrible, maybe just bad things. And people see that and they think, yeah, they're just like us. They're not special. They're just a bunch of hypocrites. They don't really believe. They don't do they don't practice what they preach. But when we do that good thing, they see it. And that has the opposite effect. They think, well, maybe there is something to this. Regardless, when God puts things in our path, even the little things make a difference. God's plan is minute. Now, does that mean have I turned the doorknob to the left or to the right, it's going to make a difference? Probably not.